What if I told you that a quiet photographer with a Cuban cigar obsession once outsmarted an entire police force, vanished into thin air from a judge's office, and left behind only a mocking message spray painted on a vault wall? This isn't fiction. This is the true story of how one man turned a casual conversation with his neighbor into the most audacious bank heist in history, and then disappeared forever, sending cheeky postcards to the detectives who couldn't catch him. July 19, 1976. Nice in France. The French Riviera's crown jewel was about to witness something that would make international headlines and leave investigators scratching their heads for decades. The Société Générale Bank stood as a fortress of financial security. Its vault, a 75-year-old 20-ton steel monument to impenetrability, housed the treasures of France's elite. Money, jewelry, gold bars, family heirlooms worth millions. People trusted this bank with their most precious possessions because, quite simply, the vault was considered uncrackable. But on this particular Monday morning, something was terribly wrong. Bank Director Jacques Pelletier arrived as usual, coffee in hand, expecting another routine day. The outer vault door opened perfectly, as it had thousands of times before. But the inner door? It wouldn't budge. Not an inch. At first, nobody panicked. Old mechanisms stick sometimes, right? They called the manufacturer. An expert arrived, tools in hand, confidence radiating from his professional demeanor. He worked the lock mechanism once, twice, 3 times. Everything functioned perfectly. Yet the door remained sealed tight. As morning stretched into afternoon, frustrated customers gathered outside. Their patience evaporated with each passing hour. "Where's our money?" they demanded. "What's happening in there?" The expert brought reinforcements. Then more tools. Nothing worked. By noon, a terrifying possibility emerged. What if the door was being held shut from the inside? But that was impossible. There was only one way in and out of this vault. At 3 p.m. they made a desperate decision: break through the wall. The first hole revealed the unthinkable. The vault had been completely gutted. Police swarmed the scene like ants on spilled honey. What they found inside defied logic and shattered every assumption about bank security. 4,000 safe deposit boxes ransacked. Millions in cash vanished. Gold bars, jewelry, precious stones, all gone. But the robbers had left something behind. A message spray-painted in bold letters across the vault wall. Sans arms, sans violence, sans haine. Without weapons, without violence, without hate. It wasn't just a robbery. It was a statement. A declaration. Almost poetic. The evidence told an incredible story. A tunnel, professionally dug, connected the vault to the city's sewer system. 27 gas cylinders lay scattered about, fuel for industrial-grade blowtorches. Ventilation equipment. Half a mile of electrical cable. This wasn't a smash-and-grab job by desperate amateurs. This was the work of criminal masterminds. The tunnel alone represented weeks of back-breaking labor. Someone had planned this heist with military precision, accounting for every detail, every obstacle, every possible complication. The estimated haul? $10 million, making it the largest bank robbery in world history. Media outlets worldwide seized on the story. The heist of the century blazed across newspaper headlines from Paris to New York. The bank offered a $250,000 reward, a fortune in 1976, for information leading to arrests. But who could pull off something this sophisticated? Detectives worked around the clock, interviewing thousands of people. Bank employees, customers, construction workers, anyone who might have noticed something unusual. A pattern emerged pointing to a notorious criminal organization known as the Sewer Rats, a gang that specialized in using underground tunnel systems for their crimes. But as investigators dug deeper, they realized something crucial. While the sewer rats had the manpower and criminal expertise, none of them possessed the intellectual capacity to orchestrate such an elaborate scheme. Someone else was pulling the strings. The real mastermind remained invisible. October brought the breakthrough they desperately needed. 2 suspects under surveillance walked into a local bank, brazenly attempting to sell gold ingots. The bank employee, sharp-eyed and suspicious, checked the serial numbers. Perfect matches to the stolen loot. Within minutes, police surrounded the building. The 2 men found themselves in custody, facing the full weight of French justice. Under intense interrogation, and let's just say French police weren't particularly concerned with gentle questioning techniques in 1976. One suspect cracked. He gave up a name that surprised everyone. Albert, a photographer. Albert Spaggiari didn't fit anyone's idea of a criminal mastermind. Neighbors described him as charming, romantic, devoted to his wife. He lived quietly in the countryside, away from urban chaos, making his living behind a camera lens. The idea that this soft-spoken artist could orchestrate the crime of the century seemed absurd. But when police raided Albert's cottage, they found illegal weapons and explosives hidden throughout the property. Their mild-mannered photographer had a very different side. Even then, Albert maintained his innocence through hours of relentless questioning. Police tried every trick in their playbook, legal and otherwise. Nothing worked. Albert remained calm, collected, unshakable, until they threatened his wife. Confess or we'll charge your wife with weapons possession. She'll spend decades in prison. That broke him. Albert's love for his wife was his only weakness, and police exploited it ruthlessly. To save her, he revealed everything. Albert's confession read like something from a spy thriller, but every detail checked out. The idea had germinated 2 years earlier during a casual conversation with a neighbor who worked at the bank. One innocent comment changed everything. You know, that vault doesn't even have an alarm system. Intrigued, Albert rented a safety deposit box, giving him legitimate access to the vault. Armed with his photographer's eye and a small camera, he methodically documented every inch of the space. Angles, measurements, weak points, security gaps. Nothing escaped his attention. But how do you rob a vault with only one entrance, constantly monitored by bank staff? Albert's answer was elegantly simple: create a second entrance. Nice's extensive underground sewer system ran throughout the city, but not directly under buildings. Albert would need to dig his own tunnel from the nearest sewer line to the bank's foundation. For weeks, he explored the underground labyrinth, smoking Cuban cigars to mask the overwhelming stench. The sewer system was a maze of tunnels, pipes, and chambers that seemed to stretch forever. Finding the right access point felt impossible. Then inspiration struck. Disguising himself as a contractor, Albert walked into City Hall and requested detailed sewer system blueprints. Officials handed them over without question. Now he had his roadmap. The nearest sewer line sat 30 feet from the bank vault, a manageable distance, except for one problem. The tunnel would run directly under one of Nice's busiest boulevards, where constant traffic might detect digging sounds. Albert needed help. Professional help. A trip to Marseille connected Albert with several criminal organizations, including his future partners, the sewer rats. When he explained his plan, their eyes lit up with dollar signs. This wasn't just a robbery, it was the score of a lifetime. The gang provided manpower, equipment, and criminal expertise. Albert contributed the brains and meticulous planning that would make it all possible. But first, they had to dig through 30 feet of earth and concrete without alerting anyone above ground. Albert positioned lookouts with radio communications around the work site. Teams of diggers worked in 10-minute shifts, any longer, and the confined, poorly ventilated space would cause men to collapse from exhaustion. They brought in ventilation equipment and ran electrical cables from a nearby garage to power fans and lights. A doctor remained on standby for emergencies. 9 grueling weeks later, they reached the vault's outer wall. The vault's 12-inch reinforced concrete barrier presented their final obstacle. Albert's biggest fear was noise. Industrial drilling equipment might alert people on the street above. Testing proved his worries unfounded. The sounds barely registered above ground. Saturday, July 17th became their D-Day. Weekend timing gave them maximum hours before bank employees returned Monday morning. At 2 a.m. Sunday, they finally broke through into the vault itself. Their first task: welding the main vault door to its frame, buying precious escape time if anyone attempted entry. Then the real work began. 4,000 safety deposit boxes stretched before them like a treasure hunter's dream. Box after box revealed unimaginable wealth, jewelry that could ransom kings, gold bars worth fortunes, cash in multiple currencies. They celebrated their success with an impromptu feast, using gold-plated dinnerware stolen from one of the boxes, dining like royalty in their underground palace. Even fate seemed to favor them. That night, an armored car arrived for a routine deposit, unknowingly dropping additional cash directly into the robbers' hands through the vault's deposit slot. 27 hours inside the vault netted them the contents of 400 boxes, barely 10% of the total, but more wealth than they could carry. Monday morning at 5 a.m., Albert declared it was time to leave. But before departing, he grabbed a can of spray paint and left his signature message on the vault wall. Sans arms, sans violence, sans haine. Albert's poetic message became a cultural phenomenon. Instead of greeting each other with hello or goodbye, people throughout France began saying without weapons, without violence, without hate. The phrase appeared on graffiti walls, in newspaper editorials, even in casual conversation. Albert had somehow transformed a massive theft into a symbol of genteel rebellion against institutional authority. But the romance couldn't last forever. When investigators finally arrested Albert and his accomplices, he proved surprisingly cooperative, providing detailed confessions and technical explanations of the heist's planning and execution. His cooperation earned him regular meetings with the presiding judge, who needed to evaluate Albert's mental state and willingness to assist in recovering the stolen money. Every Thursday, Albert would sit in the judge's office, discussing the case, answering questions, appearing to be the model of rehabilitation. The judge expected Albert would receive a reduced sentence in exchange for his assistance. He was wrong. During their last meeting before trial, Albert arrived as usual, carrying 3 hand-drawn maps of Nice's sewer system. He began explaining the heist route in meticulous detail, pointing out starting locations, digging directions, and final destinations. The judge leaned forward, studying the intricate drawings with fascination. "We started from here," Albert explained, standing up and moving behind the judge's chair to get a better angle on the maps. "Then we moved this way and finally arrived there." The judge remained focused on the papers, completely absorbed in Albert's technical explanation. In that moment of distraction, Albert calmly turned toward the window behind the judge's desk, and jumped. The judge's office sat on the first floor, making Albert's leap survivable. He landed squarely on the roof of a parked car below, where a motorcycle and driver waited. Within seconds, both men disappeared into nice, winding streets. Albert Spaggiari had vanished into legend. Police launched massive manhunts but never found Albert or the stolen money. He had seemingly evaporated into thin air, leaving behind only memories and mysteries. But Albert wasn't finished making headlines. Over the following years, investigators regularly received provocative photographs and mocking messages delivered through newspapers and magazines. Albert was out there somewhere, living freely, thumbing his nose at the authorities who couldn't catch him. In one particularly classy gesture, he sent $600 cash to the owner of the car whose roof had broken his fall during the courthouse escape, compensation for the damage. His beloved wife, the woman whose threatened imprisonment had forced his original confession, chose not to join his life of exile. She remained in Nice, continuing her work as a nurse, perhaps understanding that some adventures are meant for one person alone. Albert Spaggiari died in 1989 from lung cancer. Those Cuban cigars had finally caught up with him. He took the location of the stolen money to his grave, leaving investigators empty-handed and the case permanently unsolved. His story became the stuff of criminal legend, inspiring books, documentaries, and countless retellings around the world. The phrase sans armes, sans violence, sans haine remains etched in French cultural memory, a reminder of the day when one man's impossible dream became reality. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Albert's story isn't the technical brilliance of his heist, or even his dramatic courthouse escape. It's the fact that he proved something profound about the nature of crime and punishment. Sometimes the most dangerous criminals aren't the violent ones who kick down doors and demand money at gunpoint. Sometimes they're the quiet observers with cameras and Cuban cigars, patient enough to spend 2 years planning the perfect crime, and clever enough to disappear forever into the shadows of history. The vault that was once considered impregnable now stands as a monument to human ingenuity, and to the eternal truth that no security system is stronger than the imagination of those determined to defeat it. Albert Spaggiari didn't just rob a bank. He robbed it with style, escaped with panache, and left behind a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. Without weapons, without violence, without hate, and without ever being caught. The next time you walk past a bank and marvel at its security systems, remember Albert's story. Somewhere out there, there might be another quiet photographer studying angles, taking measurements, and smoking cigars while planning the impossible. Because if history has taught us anything, it's that the word impossible is just another challenge waiting for the right person to prove it wrong.